Planning board meeting to order. And the first thing we need to do is, Paul, would you please read the legalese stuff that needs to be read?
Sure. As clerk of the planning board, I'm required to read the following statement. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, May 12, 2020 public meeting of the Falmouth Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to the meeting shall be provided in the following manner. 1. The meeting will be televised via Falmouth Community Television. It's on now. 2. Upon public comment can be addressed to the planning board using the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comment will be read into the record at the appropriate points in the meeting. A. Zoom meet logon instruction. I. Instructions and the meeting link for this specific meeting can be found at the following web address: falmouthmass.us/1112/planning board. II. Please plan on 10 to 15 minutes of preparation time to log in, though it may be less if you have previously used Zoom on the device you will use to access the meeting. 3. Additionally, public comments may be sent in advance of the meeting to the following address: planning@falmouthma.gov, at least 5 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting. Documents and audio or video files may also be submitted via email. Submitted email comments and documents will be made a part of the meeting record and may be read into the record, summarized, or displayed during the meeting at the discretion of the chair. 4. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may appear remotely and are not required to be physically present. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may contact the planning department to arrange an alternative means of real-time participation if unable to use the Zoom virtual meeting software. Documentary exhibits and or visual presentations should be submitted in advance of the meeting to the following address: planning@falmouthma.gov, so that they may be displayed for remote public access viewing.
Thank you, Paul. And don't take your glasses off yet, because we have to have the minutes. April 28th, 2020.
I'm not going to read the minutes.
No.
I recommend approval of the minutes of April 28th, 2020.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments to make? All in favor, just raise your hands. Okay, all who are present, approved. Okay, first on our agenda, an approval not required plan. The applicant, Arthur and Sally Hampton, Plan of land to divide one lot into 3 lots, 292 Wacoit Highway, BSS design. I'm assuming everybody has seen it all. It's an approval not required. Do you have any questions that you want to raise about this particular plan? Okay. Then I would need a motion, as usual, without regard to
Buildability.
and anything else that applies to that. Yeah. Okay. Is there a second of that motion? Charlotte seconds
No.
it. No, you've got a question, Charlotte?
No, I had an itch in my ear.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, then who seconded it?
I'll
I thought
second.
you were- Okay, Bob seconds it. All in favor? Signify by raising your hand, please. Okay, all present. Hi, Tom.
You can't vote.
No questions on it though, so hey, you're
No.
okay. Thank you for coming in.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Okay,
Very clear drawings.
yeah,
Well done.
thank you.
Right.
Okay. The next planning board discussion, and we've got quite a few things here. The first is an application for an accessory apartment. The applicant is William Shockley, site plan review application. Remember, this is just site plan that we're reviewing for a detached accessory apartment located at 404 Hayway Road, Holmes and McGrath, the engineering firm. You've all gotten quite an extensive package. There is also a correction page that was forwarded to you today on the numbers. They were all good to begin with, but it was not filled out properly. And I think you all have gotten that, have you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So everybody's gotten it. Comments, questions? Let's get the discussion going here. Yes, Jim.
Well, architecturally and conceptually, I thought it was a perfect plan. Obviously, they spent a lot of money on the design. It fit the bylaw perfectly. The building sits behind the main house, can't be viewed from any of the neighbors. It definitely has a single-family architectural appearance from the street. You can't see anything, and it's no question about it. This is an accessory building to this other structure, and I just think it's one of the best I've seen.
Okay. And Tom has brought up the plan, the drawing. And I should have mentioned Mr. Shockley has joined us too.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good job. You spent the money.
Yes. Yeah. We wanted to make sure all our I's were dotted and T's were crossed before getting to this point. So,
Thank you.
Well, you're only 2 square feet off, so you were pretty close. I think.
yeah.
I can only see 4 people here, one of which is me. And so if anybody else wants to make any comment, you're going to have to say something.
I'd like to just, first of all, I agree with Jim wholeheartedly. It's a very nice job. It meets the bylaw exactly. An effort was made to do that. It looks as if it's going to be a very good project. When I was going through it at first, I thought the issue was going to be about wildlife corridors.
Mhm.
And yet that doesn't prove to be true at all. But it would be, so I realize that it doesn't apply to this. To me, this looks as if this is a 4 square by right application for the bylaw. But when it comes up with putting deer before people for low income housing, that will be an interesting discussion. I would think that the board would
Yep,
go on the side of the people.
Mhm.
If it ever come to that.
Any other comments? Jim?
Well, I don't think an accessory apartment should be referred to as low-income housing. I
Excuse
think
me.
I think
No,
that
you're quite
absolutely-
right.
It's not deed restricted. It's a way to family members, people can stay in their house and make their house a lot more usable and create workforce type housing or rentable housing. And I think that's where this is really a spectacular job. It's a good one.
Bob?
Just another comment about the wildlife. Uh, this type of zoning, large residential lots for zoning, has actually reduced the amount of habitat for wildlife because it's caused spread.
Right.
We've built in places where we shouldn't be building. We go back to our thoughts on the local comprehensive plan that villages should be, people should be in villages and not spread out all over the place. If you look at a lot of European countries, you seem to have a lot more countryside around places of population in Europe than you do here. Friends of mine from out west, where there's lots of land, they can't believe how close towns are, that you can't tell when you're in one town from the other because they're just so interconnected. There's no open space between towns here. But just to get back to the wildlife thing, wildlife is very adaptable. And one of the comments was deer in the driveway. Well, obviously that house was built someplace where the deer were used to going. So I don't really buy the argument that it's going to be a disruption to the wildlife.
No, and they have the whole row underneath the electric wires. They can run back and forth very freely.
Yeah.
Tom?
If I may, we did have a number of letters from the butters that you've seen. I've asked Michaela to have all those for us to make sure that we didn't miss any of those, and I asked her to come back to the meeting. But in the earlier email that I had with the folks at 380 Hayway, that was the LeBron's plan that from the folks at 380. I don't have their names right here in front of me, but in the regulatory map that I had up a couple of minutes ago, I had talked about in how the wildlife corridor for this area goes from Coonamessett Pond all the way over to the other side of Curry Road. Between the foraging and the migratory areas, it's 1.4 miles wide. The area that's specifically for foraging is about 5,000 feet wide. And as Bob pointed out, the zoning allows for that sort of thing. And in the case of the LeBron plan that showed a wildlife corridor at the back of the lot, those lots at 380 were created under a subdivision plan. If I go back to the regulatory map in just a second here.
It was a revised subdivision plan. There was a subdivision plan in the 50s, and then they changed it again. And that's where their corridor came in.
So you see here that this is Edgewood Lane. So these lots were created under a subdivision plan. And in that subdivision plan, the requirement was to not clear the whole area for wildlife. And so the engineer left a strip at the back of the property. The remainder of these properties on Hayway were all created under the A&R process, so there are no constraints put on them. So while the planning board could move the property if they want, slide the unit around a bit, there aren't any constraints on the property. And the fact that it's 5,000 feet wide and 1.4 miles wide in total, I don't know that we're going to create any substantial additional habitat by moving that lot around, but it is within the board's purview to do so. It's a little wonky when you talk about what's created under subdivision control and what wasn't to the neighbors. But I did want to make that point that while some plans do have that barrier on them, shown on them, it was a product of the subdivision that created Edgewood Lane and not the lots that created Hayway.
Okay. Thank you, Tom, for looking into that further. Yes, Paul.
I'd just like to make a comment. I drove out there today and I thought the project was well laid out and I thought it fit in with the requirements that we're talking about. Since it is a detached accessory apartment, obviously it would go to the zoning board of appeals. From planning board perspective, I saw no problem with it.
I'd like to ask you, Pat,
Yes, Charlotte.
an issue was raised by one of the letters coming in from an abutter about they felt it would lower their property values. And I would think that this project, it's a good looking project, and I would think that it would add to the value of their property. And Jim, I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, first of all, you'd have to drive in their backyard to see it. So I think,
Right.
that's a comment. And I think a lot of those comments were made by people that bought the lots before we changed the zoning, and they're not aware that we've changed the zoning. And
Oh.
that this is something which a by right use for town. I mean, it's this, I just think that they're trying to argue against the accessory apartment anywhere. And that's the same argument everyone made, but we tried to make it so it fit into the neighborhood, and I think we did a good job. I just don't think they're familiar with it. I think this meets our bylaw as clean as it can get.
It does. I just wondered if there were any, in your experience of selling properties, I would think that in fact, he's
Yeah,
increasing the
yeah.
value of his own property.
No question about it. It has, well, think about this. What does that room rent for? Okay, if it rents for $1,000, what does that pay for somebody's mortgage? How much more house can they afford? It's a huge impact on value,
Right.
affordability.
Upwards, not downwards.
No, it's upwards, and I
Right.
they're getting advice from the wrong people.
Okay, so now I'll take my turn to make a few comments here too. I like the plan quite a bit. I know that most of the comments were on wildlife and disturbing a perceived way of life because of a larger property and all that. But my own comments on wildlife are, they tend to go where they want to go anyway. I just had a red fox as I was out at our compost pile, startled, looking at me at the compost. She proceeded away, crossing our yard with a chunk of suet in her mouth. Didn't disturb her at all. A hummingbird fed from the feeder. Well, I had it in my hand. They do what they're going to do. They have adapted to people. I think we've adapted to their presence too. It adds to our way of life, I believe. So I'd like to lay to rest, just as you all have, that we don't think that that is a problem. I want to acknowledge that we got letters from Dorothy, it looks like Scarzi, I believe, Michael Ames and Helen Ames.
All right, sorry.
What? That's okay. I don't think we need to show them. I'm acknowledging that we've gotten these. And James and Margaret Rabiza. And Kathy Pacheco. And some others have come in, and her husband too, Ronald Pacheco. And then the Fennells. These have come in more recently, Steve and Petra Fennell. And it was the Fennells that raised the issue of the wildlife corridor, and most of the others didn't want density changed at all by the addition of an accessory apartment. I think I've done a fair summary of that. Do you all agree, or did you see something else you'd
that's
like
good.
to add? Okay. When we look at it from our site plan review perspective, the siting is great. The way it is put on there in conjunction with the house, the driveway is great. The cutting down of trees, it's a necessity within 10 feet of the perimeter to keep mold and rot away from the house, the new cottage. Grassing it, landscaping with shrubs planted there. I find that to be desirable. Are there any other comments to add to that? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I agree that this does meet all the tenets of the bylaw. It's about the size of a garage, a typical garage on the property. It meets the criteria that it matches the design of the existing home. The roof pitch is the same. The siding is the same. The trim, all that. It meets all that criteria. So it's for me, it's a go. It's a good plan, and it's going to go before the ZBA anyway. So the abutters will have their chance at the ZBA hearing to voice their concerns. But our concerns are how the property looks, the design of the building, and where it's positioned on the property, and it meets all those criteria.
It also, Bob, is in a coastal pond overlay district, but there's plenty of land here that no special concerns need to be met.
Right. That was
Um,
all in the staff report.
Correct. And I think we should probably be mentioning this so that the viewing audience can hear that too. Architectural effect, okay, you covered all of that. There will be a paved driveway as shown on the plan. So that's been all covered. There are certain conditions, and I think we should be discussing those, don't you? Because that will all feed into the decision. First condition, the plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the planning board to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to section 240-183B of the zoning bylaw, no permit for full or partial occupancy shall be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval and predecessor approvals have been met. That's a standard clause. Number 2, either the principal dwelling or accessory apartment must be owner occupied for a period of 7 months in every calendar year, or owned by a nonprofit organization or government authority whose purpose is to provide affordable housing. An affidavit shall be submitted annually to the building commissioner, signed by the property owner, attesting that the principal dwelling or accessory apartment has been owner occupied for a period of 7 months and not otherwise rented as set forth above. Tom, do we put this in our site plan review? Or is this something that the ZBA inserts in their decision?
Typically, we have our recommendation for the referral to the ZBA will include those things, but our role, as you know, is site plan because it's detached, and the zoning board of appeals will do the actual use.
Right.
But we will, anticipating that we'll have a favorable recommendation from the board. We'll have that motion drafted for our June 9th meeting, board's review.
Yep. And then there's the next one, how the rental shall be rented. And there's the accessory apartment structure shall be assigned the address. And that again would be the ZBA, I believe, because they're going to be doing the structure. Okay. The thing that did trouble me a bit is that, well, first of all, under 5, there's kind of a hanging last sentence there in the staff review. Other stormwater infiltration measure for the new roof area at a minimum, that needs to be taken out of there. But considering the size of the property, I know this came out of engineering. The applicant will install dry wells, rain garden, or other stormwater infiltration measure for the new roof area at a minimum. How does the board feel about that? Jim?
First of all, a lot of people don't like gutters and downspouts. This is an 1.5 acre lot, and it's a heavily wooded area. I think this is boilerplate stuff that the engineers would stick on everything, and it doesn't apply to this parcel at all.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Mr. Shockley.
So where the cottage is going to be is very flat. So we will want to put dry wells in anyway to deal with the rainwater there, so we don't have a big puddle sitting around the house. So we definitely plan on putting dry wells in when they do the excavation or the form work for the foundation.
Okay, so that takes care of that issue.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So really, from what we need to have in our decision is that the plan as presented to us with the paved driveway, the lawn, the plantings, I think is all okay from what I'm getting from everybody's comments.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tom, Michaela, do you feel that you have enough from us that you can write up a decision for our June 9th meeting?
Yes. Yep. We
Okay,
can,
yes.
we'll have that written up for you for the June 9th meeting. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
We're not
Jim?
meeting again till June 9th?
Correct.
Correct.
Jim?
I would just recommend to the applicant when he goes to the ZBA that he bring the assessor's card for the property, as well as a Google Earth picture in the summertime when the deciduous trees all have leaves on it. And this is a
Okay.
very, very heavily wooded lot that you can't see at all in the summertime. And it's just amazing. The picture we have is in the winter and it leaves on the trees. But
Yeah.
I didn't have GSI this week, so I was stuck using Google Earth. And the summertime pictures there, it's unbelievable. Like,
Yeah,
you can't
it's
see this thing at all.
yeah,
It's all
Yeah.
wooded. Yeah.
yeah.
But Mr. Shockley, have you set up a meeting with the ZBA yet, a date?
I have not. I didn't know. I was under the impression that I needed to get your guys' approval before I needed to go to the ZBA. So
Yeah, it's always wise to do that, I think, because
Yeah.
we also give a referral to them.
yeah, okay. So
Okay.
when do I need to do that? Is that do I need to go in? I mean, apply to
Tomorrow.
them tomorrow or
You,
I'll back-
you are welcome to apply to them as soon as you'd like, or you're welcome to wait, but that is completely up to you. But you can apply tomorrow if you would like.
okay?
Sorry.
I
Tom?
would certainly recommend based on the zoning board of appeals schedule, go ahead knowing that the board's going to voting to approve this. And the lag that we've got between this meeting and the next, just because of the schedule, that you get your application in. And it's always best to have us take a look at it before you submit it, just to make sure it's fine with them. So always
Okay.
talk with the staff before you submit it.
Okay, do I so how do I go about that since town hall is town hall still closed?
Yes.
So
Okay, so do I
we're gonna
send do I
email pictures.
Oh, just email pictures. Okay. Okay, I can do that.
We'll talk about that tomorrow, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to suggest to the applicant that he read the Code of Falmouth 24216. It is the criteria for a special permit, and you present your case following down those points. It talks about character. There's a whole list of things that you have to comply, and it's the guidelines for for the special permit granting authority. And you should just focus on those issues.
Okay, what
Code of Falmouth, you can Google it. 240 is the zoning code, and it's under 216. I forget the
Okay.
numbers 1 through 7, but
okay.
generally the special purpose granting authority guidelines is what you want to
Okay.
focus on.
And Bob,
right.
you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the issue of density. I always look at things as to what else could possibly happen with a piece of property. This property owner could put a huge addition on the house and have another part of his family move in, 4 or 5 other family members. There's certainly enough land to expand the footprint of that house. So I tend to look at things that way. If you're creating a 1-bedroom apartment, you're not going to have 5 or 6 people living there. So it's just what it is. Density is, it could be a family. When this house, when all 5 kids were here, there were 7 people here. Now there's 2. So density is a fluctuating thing. And I always look at what could be versus what is actually going to be there. And I think people just need to relax a little bit more about the whole density issue.
Yeah, this whole project is for my parents. My parents live in a very rural area of Virginia. They're older. They're live in a house that they're not gonna be able to live in for very much longer. And the idea is for them to move here to be next to me. Currently they're 600 miles away, and very rarely to get to see their grandchild. So that's the idea behind this structure.
And this was one of the main reasons we wanted this bylaw.
Yeah.
That's the reason, right there.
Yep.
So hopefully within the year, you'll be able to welcome them to the neighborhood.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Tom and or Michaela can talk with you further about how you go ahead with all this. And we will have a decision for you on our next meeting, which is June 9th.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Thomas, you can get rid of Mr. Shockley now.
I'm leaving.
Bye.
Thank you.
Next is Sunrise Estates bonus lots / Shamsi request. Mr. Shamsi reached out to Tom and, unbidden, unsolicited. And so Tom has spoken with him. Tom, would you fill us in?
Hit your mic, Tom.
Will
Yeah, you
do.
have to, you're muted.
Yeah, I think I'm back with you now.
Okay, and Jim, you've disappeared. There you go.
So I said I'm down a screen, so I'm pretty sure you can hear me.
Yeah.
If not, yes, Mr. Shamsi sent me an email asking if he and I could talk, and I sent him back an email that says, frankly, don't really want to talk to you if you're represented by counsel. I then got a follow-up email from him saying, well, no, my lawyer says it's okay. And then I got an email from Bob Ament saying, thank you for the courtesy, but in this case, it's fine for you to speak to Mr. Shamsi. So I did email him back, and we did talk last week. And in fact, I talked with Bob Ament earlier tonight about the nature of our conversation this evening. So as always, I'm very hesitant to to get out beyond my responsibilities for things like that. So we have been talking about this internally with Frank Duffy at Town Council, Noreen Stockman in-house about this particular case. And as Frank says in emails and opinions to us, this is a very unusual case. And there are really no clear precedents to follow based on the fact that we had a 2004 special permit that expired. And then in 2019, essentially the board revived the permit, but said there really wasn't an opportunity to change the conditions of the permit. And the board could at best extend that permit and allow the applicant to try to make those conditions work. In my conversation with Mr. Shamsi, he asked me, well, what are the issues on the town side? And I said, well, there are three things, and I discussed this with Bob Ament earlier, is that no one, town council, zoning enforcement, or zoning administrator, or town planner believe this is a non-conforming use because we have an active special permit in a subdivision that was created. The second thing is the dynamics, the optics of the dollar amounts are so different what the Zoning Board of Appeals is talking about from the original decision. And the third is that there's a presumption that those funds would go to Falmouth Housing Trust and no one else. And I talked about this at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. So Frank did some additional research, talked to some folks on his colleagues in municipal law, and said essentially that, and I'm going to read this, that the reason the applicant can't build on the two bonus lots is the fact that he failed to build within the original 3-year window, and not because 24138 was repealed in 2012. The right to build expired in 2008, or 4 years after the repeal. And with the additional 2-year window granted by the planning board, the applicant can proceed today. The two perspectives from town council's research is that one, that the planning board retains jurisdiction despite of the subsequent repeal by essentially granting that additional term. And more importantly, the applicant could request to amend the special permit itself before the planning board and not the ZBA, which is the appropriate board to decide that matter per council. That said, with the applicant, with an application from the permit holder for Mr. Shamsi, the board could look at those options based on the ones that are in the previous bylaw about doing an appraisal on the property, determining what the value is, and then determining what option of the three under the bylaw those funds might go to. The bylaw noted that it could be a housing trust created, a local housing fund, which in 2014 was not an option because the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund wasn't created in 2011, or the housing authority. So I let Mr. Shamsi know that we've been having this discussion in-house and that I would bring it to the planning board to ask if the planning board would be willing to entertain a potential application, Mr. Shamsi, to modify the conditions of the permit. The permit is good until January 23rd, 2021. So the first thing I advised him, if the board was so willing to entertain an application, he'd ask for an extension to make sure the permit didn't expire again. And then we'd essentially go through that process of having the appraisals done, looking at those values and discussing all these things in a hearing. So tonight's question is based on council's research. The board does retain jurisdiction. Everyone in-house believes that it's not a pre-existing non-conforming use. And then if the board is so willing to entertain an application, we would notify Mr. Ahmet, his counsel, and Mr. Shamsi that they could proceed with that, and we can report the outcome of tonight's meeting to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is meeting on this on Thursday.
So may I hear comments, discussion, questions, whatever? Jim?
Yeah, we've discussed this a lot. I was too, when we reviewed this a couple years ago, I was hesitant. I want to shut him down then. I thought we've given this developer way more than enough time. The streets were never finished. We have a long history with this guy. We gave him the years so he could do something with it. And now he's coming back to do something again. And I just assume he's got his 2 years to sell the property and donate the money. They've already been appraised. A lot of the work's already been done. We're redoing work here over and over again for some reason, and I don't think we should do it. We're wasting a lot of time.
Anybody else? Yes, Bob.
I agree with Jim. We've wasted enough time on this. He's had more than ample opportunity, and that's it.
Anybody else? Paul?
Tell him
Mic
he's
your mic
muted.
up, Paul.
Paul, click your mic on.
I agree. We've spent an awful lot of time on the past, both on landscaping and sidewalks and paving and everything else. I think one of the determination is if we do have a value for the land, who is going to get that money within the town area? I think that's the big question mark.
Anybody else?
Can I get a clarification?
Yes, John.
Jim, what are you proposing? You kind of lost me there.
Do nothing. He has 2 years to raise the money and donate it to his charity. I mean, he was telling me he needed time to do that, and he didn't do it.
To raise how much money?
Well, he wanted we gave him 2. Remember when we voted? I think he was originally, they was going to get, the lots were valued at $400,000. They were worth $200,000 a piece, and they've gone down in value. Building costs, we cut the cost to $200,000 a couple years ago, and we agreed on that number. And I think how much more time does this guy need?
But I just want to understand what you're proposing.
Do nothing. We've already handled this. We gave him an extension. He needs to complete his finish his job.
Complete it by selling the 2 lots?
Yeah, and donating the money to an approved charity or housing, whatever.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that we put a dollar amount in there when we extended it.
Yeah, I don't remember that either, John.
Well, I remember the 2 numbers of 400,000 and 200,000. I didn't go look it up. I'm going back from memory, but
that was
an extension.
That was a 2004 decision. Those numbers were in the original decision from the planning board.
Well, we also revisited them a couple years ago.
I know that we extended it for 2 years, but I think what Tom is saying that maybe just structure this a little bit differently so he can sell the lots and the money would go to a fund. Is that what you're asking for, Tom? You want some clarification on that?
Yeah. Tom?
Yes, if I may. Yes. So the 2019 decision was that the board couldn't change the deal. He had to come up with $200,000 and give them and to be deposited into a local housing fund.
$200,000 per lot.
Per lot, yes, per lot.
Okay,
Deposited into a local housing fund. That local housing fund hasn't been determined by the planning board at this point. And council said, no, you can't change that. So what council has said now is, well, based on his research and the fact that there really isn't a precedent for this, with the planning board reviving a permit that expired in 2008, that if the board wanted to go back and evaluate those conditions of the value of the lots and who the recipient of the funds would be, that is perfectly within the board's right if they so decided. And as far as the cost to do those appraisals and things like that, those costs would fall on the petitioner. So we would be involved in vetting that and reviewing that and working with the landowner as we always do. So that's our investment in working with the property owner, if the board so inclined.
so if I understand town council's position, because of what the action we did last year, we could now determine a new structure. So let's say that we said that the two lots need to be appraised by a couple of local appraisers. Let's say that they appraised out at $100,000 each, or any number. And then he would have to sell those two lots for that amount, and then give it to a fund, affordable fund that we determine would be the correct fund. Is that what I understand?
Yes, there are three noted in the bylaw: a local housing trust, a fund set up by the town, presumably the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, or the Falmouth Housing Authority.
Okay, so we have the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. And if the money went into that fund, then any other group, Falmouth Housing Trust, Falmouth Housing Authority, could apply to the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund to get all or a portion of that money. That would be an easy way to do that. And my thought is, if it gets appraised, if we say, let's get it appraised, two appraisers, and we agree on a dollar amount, again, let's say it's $100,000 per lot. That would allow Mr. Shampsey, if he chose to, he could purchase those lots himself. And then he could either build something on them or sell them to a builder or sell them to a potential homeowner. But I think that would be a great way of doing it. That's my thought. To just say he's got to come up with $400,000, I think that's the sticking point here. They may be worth $225 each. They may be worth $200 each. They may be worth $100 each. But like I hear Jim, I hear Bob, time to get on with this. And if we have the right to change the structure of the original approval, I think we should do that in a way that we feel comfortable with it.
Pat,
Pam, yes.
does that mean we would hold another public hearing and basically start this process again?
I don't think so.
That we would start a public hearing. It would be a new special permit application. We would hold a public hearing.
So she's correct?
She's correct.
Okay.
Oh my God. Remember this date, John.
Jim,
Well, we have to get this, if we don't get it resolved, the two lots are just going to sit there. And there won't be any affordable housing built, and there won't be any money for affordable housing from these two lots. That's what's going to happen.
Right. And if we keep it at 200,000, I don't know what lots are going for right now, but
Well, I don't know either, but he has no incentive to finish.
well,
Right.
if he doesn't finish the deal and we keep it at the 200,000 and he just, what happens then? Does the town then own those two lots because he defaulted on the decision, or what happens? I don't know the answer to that. Tom?
Those two lots, if they're not sold, would remain as they are. They'd be open space essentially in the development. They'd still be owned by Mr. Shampsey. He might decide he doesn't want to pay taxes on them anymore, and they may revert to the town. But essentially, they are what they are now. There are two lots that aren't buildable that would be in the development. The upside, and one of the reasons the planning board, I think, opted to do this in 2019 is that a lot of people saw a lot of value in making these lots for sale and having those funds captured so they could be used for affordable housing. The neighbors in the development really thought this was a great idea. They'd love to have 2 more units in the development. They have spoken that they didn't feel that 2 affordable units would be appropriate in their neighborhood, to paraphrase what they had said, because they thought the cost of operating the septic system would be a burden on the property owners, although it would typically be prorated. So the neighborhood was looking for 2 market rate units to be produced in the neighborhood on those lots to contribute to the septic system's upkeep and operation. And those proceeds would be going to whatever fund they went to be used for additional affordable housing in other parts of town.
Well, I for one think that that's what should happen. We should find a way to sell the lots. And the money goes into, my suggestion would be Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. That way it's available to any applicant. And the neighbors will get 2 beautiful homes built there, and they'll have more people in their association. And I think it'll take some time, but I think it'll be a win-win.
And Charlotte, you had a question or a comment?
No, I don't have a question. I have a comment on this. Our goal in 2019, when we said, okay, you can go ahead, and we agreed on the numbers at that time, because our goal was to turn this into money for affordable housing. That's what we were trying to do. And that decision was very recent. There's no reason for us to be inconsistent in our thinking now to say that, well, it's a time waste. Well, we have time, we could waste it, and it will potentially, if the numbers work for Mr. Shamsi, it will turn into some money for affordable housing. So why not go ahead and do that? It doesn't cost us any time or money for Mr. Shamsi to get the appraisal. This is something he's going to have to do. And it seems because right now, the economics on land are probably a little volatile because of the pandemic. He might need the extra time in order to be able to actually market them. I think we should keep our goal of trying to frame a decision that motivates Mr. Shamsi to sell them and put the money into the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay. So Tom, that means then from what I'm getting is about half the board says, forget it, let it go away. And another half of the board says, no, we should open up a new hearing, have Mr. Shamsi get a new valuation on it and try to turn this into money. Is that what I'm hearing from the board? Jim?
I just wanted to point out that in the last 3 or 4 years, I believe there's been 5 or 6 lots in this subdivision sold off and marketed. He's had plenty of time to do it. There other developers have bought off chunks. There's another whole section of this that, another street that's been built, and there's 5 or 6 new houses. He's been holding on to these, trying to make something special, more out of them than they should just be done. Should have been done a while ago. But if I'm all set in having another hearing, other neighbors, going through the whole thing again, but how many times can we do this?
Well, the problem is, from what you heard Tom say, then they just sit there open. The town gets nothing.
Right now and donate. I think the original plan, they thought they were going to be worth $400,000.
Yeah.
He was only going to donate put 200 in his pocket. What happens is he doesn't have anything left to put in his pocket. That's the problem. Too bad.
Well, we're not
That's
moving
not
off
our
the
problem.
time on this. I would like to see, personally, I would like to see us open up another hearing, try to realize some money by having him do some valuations and see how it can proceed there. Because it's just simply having another hearing and saying yay or nay on that, I think.
I would like to do the same thing. Last year, when we had this discussion, we gave them the 2-year extension. I was not aware that the planning board had the right to change the structure of the 2004 decision. The term, not the structure, but the term.
At that time, according to council, we didn't, but he's
And-
reviewed,
and-
done some additional research.
And if those lots were worth 300,000 apiece right now, he would sell them and he would give up the 400,000 and keep 200,000. So far, it has not been there's no economical incentive for him to do anything. And I think if we can find a way to help him have some incentive, everybody will win, including the neighbors, the Affordable Housing Fund, whichever fund it goes into, and Mr. Champsey, who now lives in, I think, California. It'll be a burden removed from him. I think we should just find a way to do it. And I don't think it'd be that difficult.
Okay, so let me see a show of hands. Who would like to open up another hearing to try to resolve the whole situation? Show of hands, please.
One apiece.
One apiece,
Well,
okay.
I'll go along with it.
Pam, okay. I can't see your hand, Pam. You're for it? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going along 5, 6. Paul, are you going to vote one way or the other?
I'm reluctant to open up another hearing and start this process all over again. I mean,
Looks like it's gonna happen.
efforts being done with town council that we should be able to do this without having to go through a full hearing. That's my concern.
That's what I would hope too.
Fine, but
I agree.
seem
But
to
can
make
we?
not a whole new process over again. When we know what the issues are, we know what the basic structure-
Nothing's going to change.
Sorry?
Nothing's going to change.
Mhm.
The terms are going to change.
Tom, can we do this without opening up a whole new hearing?
Well, if I may, I would love it to, and I know I saw a lot of hands, but I would love if we could kind of craft a motion, something to the effect that says, move the town of the Falmouth Planning Board, investigate the options to reopen the special permit with consulting with town council and have that official motion. So we've got that put together. So, because the hands was sort of a general sort of understanding, but we usually take voice votes on these things. So would
Okay.
the board move to investigate, to offer the opportunity to renegotiate the terms of the deal and work with town council on developing what that process?
Would somebody like to make that motion, please?
So move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Voice
Aye.
vote,
Aye.
voice vote, please.
Okay, Charlotte, yes. John?
Can I just say
Yes.
one thing, please? I'd
Sure.
rather it doesn't say renegotiate, restructure,
Restructure.
Okay.
restructure.
So Charlotte is a yes, John is a yes, Paul?
Yes.
Yes, Bob,
Yes.
reluctantly,
Yeah.
Jim,
Reluctantly, yes.
reluctantly, Pam,
Yes.
yes, and I'm a yes.
I just have one question though.
Yes,
He
Bob.
still has another year left on the deal from 2019.
You can't let it run out, that's the problem.
Right. But, it's still a year.
Well, it's part of
No.
the year, and it's a very
It's only
confusing
part.
year.
It's only part of a year because it's January, whatever it is. It's
Right.
January 2021.
Right.
Okay.
So we're in May right now, so it's about a half year.
Okay.
So that's why there's a certain sense of urgency, I think. Okay, and as Tom indicated, the ZBA is hearing this on Thursday, and he will be there. And I would like to suggest that one of our board members, and I had spoken with Charlotte, be there as well to be a spokesperson for the board, should that be necessary. Does that seem to be a good idea?
Great idea.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Jim?
Well, I think everyone should know what they're trying to do. They are actually applying to change our order of conditions.
I know
Right.
that.
Okay, the
That's-
ZBA is considering changing the order of conditions for the planning board special permit. They do that, holy cow, look out.
That's why I think it's critical
out.
that we have not only Tom, but somebody from the board.
Well, and
Yes.
our purpose in being there would be to underscore our total agreement with our attorney, Mr. Duffy, on who has jurisdiction for that. That's what we would be there for, not to discuss any of the terms or merits or anything.
That's right.
Right. Right. Okay, Jim?
And I suggest that whoever appoints the ZBA be made aware of this situation, what they're trying to do. Whether it be the selectman or whether it be the town manager, that they're actually considering overruling and changing one of our order of conditions, which I can't imagine that anyone should be allowed to do that.
Well, somebody brought this to them to consider
I
it too.
know, you can bring it to them, but the question is whether they're hearing or not. The fact that they even said they'd hear it bothers me.
That
Okay.
shouldn't even be on their agenda, honestly.
Ridiculous.
I know it shouldn't have been on their agenda. So
Well,
that is
the thought
why,
about that is that Noreen actually agrees with that it shouldn't have been on their agenda. So I'm wondering how it got there.
The chairman.
It's a question.
Right.
that's why I think it's critical that not only Tom, but somebody be a spokesperson for directly from our board too. So it's not just looked at as an administrative problem. Do you all, yes, Tom?
Yeah, just if someone makes an application to the board to ask for a non-conforming use, you just can't turn them down at the gate. It has to come in and people have to talk about, is this a non-conforming use? Is this not? So they have a right to come before the board, the zoning board of appeals. In that determination by the board, they could say, no, we don't think this is the proper place, and the board could approve it or vote it down. And in the case of our case, if we have conditions of a special permit from 2004, and we're looking at restructuring those terms, the only way to amend a special permit is with a special permit to amend it. So it would likely be a special permit process that we'd be doing with notice to the abutters. So we'd hear from the neighborhood, we'd hear from the interested parties, and it would take a few months to get through that. So the extension, I think, is valid in order to make sure we've got time for that, because time flies when you're locked in your house.
Chances are, the way the conversation has gone tonight among us takes the heat out of the desire that the applicants had to go to the ZBA,
Possibly.
more than likely.
So is everybody okay with Charlotte representing? She's vice chair.
Absolutely.
Do I have any negative feelings about that? Okay, so Charlotte, you will represent the board then, and Tom will be there as well. Thank you. Okay,
Can I ask you a question?
yes, thanks, Paul. What?
Did we get a report on that at the next meeting?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It should be on the agenda for the next meeting, what the results of that meeting with ZBA is, because I think that.
Sure. So,
Absolutely.
Michaela, put that on the agenda, please. Thank you.
Making a note right now to put that on the agenda.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got that one sort of unhappily put to bed. The next on the agenda is Blue Flag Campground update. And we have, I believe, a representative from the campground here to tell us where they are. And this was, as you would remember, engendered by a complaint from people in the neighborhood that the trees were stripped down and piles of dirt, and the Airstream trailers just kind of cheek by jowl. So Brad Guidi agreed to come in and let us all know what's going on, and hopefully the people in the area are also listening so they will know what's going on. Mr. Guidi.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me tonight. I'm prepared a presentation here that I will attempt to share with everybody.
Could Mr. Weedy please explain his connection to the project?
Ah, yes.
Oh, yes, I'm with Blue Flag Development. We are the developers on the project.
You're trying to get something loaded in or what?
There we go.
Okay,
That's
here we
helpful.
go.
That's perfect.
That's actually mine. I think I'm sharing, but
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. I was having trouble pulling it up. So I did listen to I believe it was last month's recording of the meeting, and a couple things I heard. Obviously, there is concern about the trees. I heard the quote that the building is horrible. I heard that we are not in communication with any neighbors, and then we destroyed their neighborhoods. And these are all quotes that were actually said at the last meeting. I have to say, I have been in constant communication with representatives of Saconaset Hills, the next door. As recently as 5:30 this evening, I was emailing with one of the neighbors. I've been to their homes. I've looked out their windows. So I'm not quite sure where that is coming from, but I just don't believe it's accurate. So I was a little dismayed to hear that. Beyond that, I think this presentation will help kind of like reset where we are and understand the complexity of this project and what it takes to get a site like this to what we promised. So, Tom, maybe you could just page forward a little bit. Let's go to this page here.
Sorry, it's a PDF, not the slideshow. So it's
Yeah, this is great. So just to remind everybody, there was originally 122 campsites on this site. We've reduced the number of campsites to 108. So I did hear in the last meeting that, again, the campsites were packed together. There's actually less campsites now than there were then. So again, I'm not quite sure where that is coming from, other than the fact that the site is not done and it is in an ugly duckling stage, like all construction goes through. The parking on the site was kind of scattered through the 12.7 acres. Everyone would just park at their trailer. We've consolidated all the parking to one area, which will be all impervious surface. We're also buffering that from the road via heavy landscaping, which we'll kind of get to later on. One of the biggest improvements is there was, it had cesspools and septic facilities on site and no nitrogen remediation system. We're putting in an over $1 million innovative and alternative wastewater treatment system that will significantly reduce the total nitrogen load on and off the site. The electric utilities, basically all the utilities, nothing met code. So we had to come in, put all new utilities in. There was no stormwater management facilities on the site. We're putting in a site-wide stormwater management system consisting of essentially 10 systems. The wetland area down near the bike path was totally overgrown with invasive species. We're doing a total remediation. It's a year-long project. Right now, we had to remove all the invasive species. That's why it's bare. We then come back and we replant everything, but that has to be in a year. I guess it's a little less than a year now because the remediation has already started. And I also just want to remind everybody what the zoning of this site was. This site was a public use zoned site. That could include such things as homes, semi-detached homes, two-family dwellings, schools, cemeteries, hospitals, and the list kind of goes on. Quite frankly, I think what we're doing is probably one of the most low-touch things you could do to this site, and we're preserving what it's been for years. We've putting in significant improvements to this site that never were there, and at the end of the day, going to hopefully improve the neighborhood. And surprisingly, I have talked to several neighbors, including a direct abutter, when I was at her house about a month ago, looking at trees, and she was really excited about the site to open. So I think there are some kind of not total, there's a level of communication here that's not going two ways. Tom, if we could kind of page to the next slide. Like I said, the site is obviously in kind of an ugly duckling stage. It's a construction site where we are having to run infrastructure throughout the entire site. The reason the trees went down is not because we were trying to get views of the stars. It's because we were installing sewer and water and electric throughout the entire site. That requires all underground work that was never there. That is a huge multi-million dollar job that's being invested into this site. The clubhouse itself, the architecture, again, I don't believe it's horrible. In these progress photos, you can see there's a retractable wall that comes out and totally opens up, looks out over the vistas. You can see we're putting in new electrical transformers, stormwater chambers throughout. That last picture there, I believe that is another stormwater chamber, on two different parts of the site. You can keep scrolling, Tom. Again, everything is underground, so all the water, the sewer. There is that last picture. That is the tanks, the reactor tanks that are being installed for the alternative, innovative sewer treatment plant, or amphidrome system, rather. That is again, close to $1 million sewer system. So I did include some renderings because I believe that was requested. So this is what the building will look like when complete. They are currently putting on the skin of the building. We obviously have been delayed along with the rest of the world. So there's some materials that are being assembled off-site that need to get shipped in, and they are delayed, but we are actively actually putting the siding onto the building now as we speak, and that stone in the front has been completed. If we go to the next picture, you can see what the back of the clubhouse is. Again, that entire wall along the first floor opens up and allows users to kind of walk in and out of the clubhouse and use the facilities. The upstairs, like we've discussed before, that is a kind of an event space or a place that you can use, and that also opens up. There's a large wraparound deck that takes advantage of those really beautiful views. And this is a rendering of the interior of the clubhouse. We can keep going. So again, the reason the trees had to be removed is because they were directly impacting where the sewer was running, and you can't just reroute around trees when you're running sewer. There's grades that need to be accounted for, and sewer needs to run down unless you get into pumps and things like that. So we have tried desperately to keep every tree that we could. We've met with neighbors out there and discussed trees. We've actively engaged the neighbors. Beyond that, like as you can see, none of the plantings have gone in yet. The natural vegetated buffer area along the street and neighboring property consists of 1,236 plants that will be installed.
What kind of plants?
Well, I'll show you that on the next slide. That is a lot of plants, and you have seen those plans. In fact, they were approved by you guys, and we've subsequently added to them. So not only are they the approved plans, but now we have added additional plantings beyond that into another level of buffer, as well as an additional fence that we're putting to screen some airstreams. So you can see on the left-hand side, the vegetated buffer planting is a mix of red maples, tupelos, Leland cypress, bayberries, white oaks, American hollies, clethra, and viburnum. That was what was approved by the planning board. Beyond that, if you could go back up, Tom, onto the previous page. We will be installing another 3,987 plants on this site. That is landscaping around the clubhouse. That is landscaping around the airstreams. And that does not count the new plantings that are being installed down in the wetland remediation area. The reason they have not gone in yet is we are also installing an irrigation system throughout this whole site to keep the plants alive and to keep the grass we're putting in. We're going to be putting meadow grasses. We're going to be putting in sod. We're going to be putting in hydroseed. Obviously, to keep all that alive, we need an irrigation system. We currently, because of COVID, do not have our irrigation well permit from the Board of Health. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. Once we get that, we can install the wells, at which time we can install our irrigation system. Beyond the plantings, we're installing low voltage lighting throughout the entire site, all dark sky compliant, that will ensure the safety of our guests and also enhance the beauty of this site not to mention, these sites are ADA accessible. I believe there's 10 units on this site which will be ADA accessible, which did not exist prior. Of note, like I said, about a month ago, might be a month and a half ago at this point, I went to 2 of our neighbors' homes, and I visited a third who wasn't there, but I was allowed to stand on her doorstep, and I've been emailing with her since. And I've invited those neighbors to come and help us place these trees once they arrive on the site, so that they would be able to actively participate in where they go and kind of the best vantage points of where the trees go to help them. So that is, again, I've been in communication with those neighbors, and any other neighbors who want to participate, that's fine as well. You can page down. So you can see the clubhouse plantings. These are ones you have not seen, the clubhouse plans, the Airstream plantings. The vegetative buffer, that was all approved by the planning board. And I mean, you can see the amount of plants. It's again, I think 1,236 plants surrounding the parking and the neighbors, as well as the new fences that are going up. So that was designed in conjunction with the neighbors. During the design phase, we actually stood out on the street with the neighbors and talked about trees and how they would go. And that is how this design was concepted. And we can get, into the details with this if you want, but it's something you have seen in the past. In terms of completion, we originally were slated, obviously we were hoping to get open this summer, but the COVID crisis has obviously presented several challenges and delays. We are doing our absolute best to keep the progress on the site moving, and to keep our construction crews safe during the process. The site work should be substantially completed by mid to end of this summer. And then the clubhouse will be completed probably in beginning of October. The good news is that most of the clubhouse work will be interior. So, again, once we get this landscaping and these wells, or once we get the wells in, we can start bringing the landscaping, and the site will obviously be dressed up almost instantaneously. The maintenance shed, I know there was discussion of that in the last meeting as well. We did try to change the architecture on that twice. With the planning board, we were not well received, so we've gone back to, we will be constructing the original building. We are waiting for the building department to open to issue our building permit on that. So that is why the construction has not started there. So the current delivery date of the entire site is essentially mid-October at this point. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does anybody have questions? Yes, Charlotte.
Could you talk a little bit about the sizes of the trees and bushes that you're planning to plant? How mature will they be?
Sure, that was all part of the planning board submission. Around the vegetative buffer, I believe the plants are around 5 to 6 feet is generally what they range, and they are quick growing plants, so they should, within 1 year be another foot taller and another foot taller the next year.
Well, 5 to 6
Anybody else?
feet on Leland cypress actually is a relatively small one. There are bigger ones that are routinely for sale.
Again, this entire plan was approved in public hearings, and the plants have been purchased. The size of the plants were denoted in those plans.
Well, I'm just thinking about the neighbors. I've driven by there a number of times, and I've had a reaction very similar to several of the neighbors. I'm kind of horrified. And in the future, looking at plans, I've learned a lot from this about questions that should have been asked. I didn't realize you were going to practically clear the site. I hadn't pictured that happening. I assumed that the mature trees would stay and maybe the underbrush would go. So that was a wrong assumption on my part. And another time I'll be able to look at plans more knowledgeably. But if there and I understand that you have an approved plan, and I'm not suggesting that we would in any way even attempt to tamper with that approval. I'm just saying that the larger the more mature the plantings can be, the sooner it will be better looking than it is. Although the aluminum airstreams are, they glow, they reflect light, they're very evident, and they need to be on your plan. You can see the buffer, and of course that's what we looked at. But now seeing the site and realizing that they're going to be just short bushes for a long time is a little discouraging.
Charlotte, first of all, I really hope that when this project is complete, we can have another conversation and you'll be thrilled with the outcome. And I really believe that will be the case. The amount of effort and the amount of work that has gone into this has been an absolute labor of love. I can tell you the plants, what is approved on the plans is a minimum. We obviously are trying to buy the biggest size plants we can. That not only benefits the neighbors, it benefits us. You know, we want this to look like a mature campground and something that is not new. You know, that is the authentic part of camping. You know, this is supposed to be an authentic experience. Unfortunately, balancing the requirements of site improvements, which is what is required in today's day and age in terms of utilities and infrastructure, you know, that does require quite a bit of removal of dirt and moving of dirt and trees. I can tell you in Blue Flag's previous projects, and you can go on our website, you know, we have taken a junkyard, a 7-acre junkyard, and converted it into an absolute gorgeous community with plantings all within in 2 years. So I think our reputation, you know, we're not the type of developer who is trying to do the minimum here. We are certainly putting every effort we can into this project, and I truly hope that you know, in 6 months we can have a conversation and you'll be thrilled with the results.
Well, I hope that that's true, because now we're hearing from the people who are there, and they are definitely quite upset.
Again, I've spoken to actual butters who are directly next door, who are really excited about the project. I don't want to obviously name names because I don't have permission, but directly next door, and have been in their houses and in their yards.
Thank you. Paul?
I'd like to make a comment. I drove out on site on Sunday. The site superintendent was quite upset when I came on, but he calmed down after I told him what I was doing there. But I agree with you. It looks like an ugly duckling at this time, but based on the plans and so forth, I'm sure it'll improve tremendously over the next couple of months. I do want to express my personal opinion for you coming out today and presenting this to us, because it's at a stage of development that's not very attractive. But you're getting there, and the plans that we did approve look very good. And I welcome you to come back again in maybe a couple of months and see how far along we're going. But I think it's a great site. I think it's a great project, and I wish you well.
Thank you, Paul.
Pat, can I ask,
Yes, ma'am.
how many square feet are on each floor of the clubhouse?
You know, I would have to look that up. I believe the total square footage of the clubhouse is about 12,000.
12,000. So,
I don't know how that divides up between the first and second floor.
and what are your months of operation?
We can be open year round. Obviously, I don't know if there's going to be a demand for that. But our months of operation would be, you know, spring through kind of early winter, and then I would imagine the months of February and March and be a part of January, we would be shut.
Did you give any thought at all, or did anyone approach you about the possibility of the town using the clubhouse if they needed more space than we have at the Herman Room?
I'm not sure what the Herman Room is.
Okay, well, it's a room in our library, which is not very large.
Yeah. So what would it, I mean, we're open for conversation. No one has, I mean, we've talked to neighbors when we had neighborhood meetings about the possibility of neighbors hosting, things there. I'm sure we would be open to the town as well as hosting some things as well if needed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Jim.
Yes, I think I did some quick math while you were presenting this thing. What's the total number of plantings? Isn't it almost 5,000 plantings that you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
Yeah, I think that's the real point here. People are looking at what's there and not what's going to be there. They're assuming that everything they're cut down, they're going to leave it there. But that's not what we approved there. I remember a very extensive landscaping plan, and it's all good. You got to give them time. It's like the middle of a construction project. You go to any construction project in the middle of it, you got to wait to see it at the end. And I think we spent a lot of time, and I thought their plantings, their landscaping plan was huge. And
huge.
And I believe the math was in excess of 5,000. So I think the neighbors got to be more patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I do appreciate that. I think understand also that us, along with the rest of the world, are experiencing delays, and it's a really tough construction environment. Obviously, we were hoping to get open this summer. We were hoping that the plantings would be going in now. But the Board of Health is not issuing permits. We can't get our irrigation wells. So there's a lot of factors at play here. But the good news is we haven't shut down construction, and we've been able to kind of limit our crews on site and push the project forward. And beyond the plantings, also remember there's going to be hydroseed and grass and meadow grass is also planted as well.
Bob.
You got to remember that at the end of every decision, it says the plans shall be constructed as approved.
As approved, right.
And that was part of the public hearings. The people came, they saw the plans, we saw the plans, we approved them, and they will be constructed as they were approved. And I agree with Jim that, Jim's and John are developers and builders. I'm a builder. You go through these ugly phases. That's just the nature of the beast. And to judge it how it is now isn't fair.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you so much for coming, Brad.
Absolutely.
I'm sure our viewers are appreciative too.
Sure. And I'll take you up on that offer in a few months. I'm happy to come back. I'll communicate with Tom on when that would be appropriate.
Great.
Well, and I want to say I'm very glad to hear that you are reaching out to the neighbors there and continuing to work with them.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Great. Thanks so much.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Okay, what we have next on our agenda is future agendas for pending applications. Tom, did you want to handle this?
Yes. In fact, I wanted to handle it last week, but I did not get to that. As you know, we've had a fair amount of applications come in. We have got them queued up. We, to Charlotte's point earlier, that we would not be meeting again until June 9th. Because of my travels and my time away, our regular scheduled meeting is Tuesday after Memorial Day. I won't be here. Mccrory is on leave, and it seemed unfair to leave that to Melinda and Michaela, capable as they are, to try to put together a meeting the day after Memorial Day. The other option was, because we'd missed that date, perhaps we might be able to meet on June 2nd. That is when the Historic Commission meets on the first Tuesday of the month. And because of our virtual meetings that we are having, we can't meet at the same time as the Historic Commission because we have to have FCTV to broadcast that for us. So our first opportunity was the June 9th meeting. As always, we will be doing as much as we can in advance of those to get things sort of squared away. As I said, with the shorthanded folks that we have, Michaela did a great job, particularly dealing with all the things that came in over the threshold on the Shockley application. I don't know that we've had an accessory housing unit that had such a sort of an upswell of interest from folks, and in trying to get back to those people as well. So June 9th is our next meeting following this one. And we've got, hopefully, we know we've got 350 Old Meeting House as special permit application to add another building to their site, a fairly large site and a fairly small building on the site. We have been working with the building inspector on 32 Walker Street, an accessory housing unit detached that is somewhat unique in the number of structures that are on the property previous to. In addition to the things such as the plans for Woods Hole Partners, their definitive plan to grandfather their zoning. I spoke briefly with Bob Ament about the schedule for that. The board has the ability to defer projects that are particularly complex in their nature. We can't sort of trade off on say, oh, we don't like that sort of projects. We're going to do these, but not these other particular ones. But in the case of where we're reviewing projects and Michaela is doing a majority of those, I'm helping a bit with the other things I'm doing. There are some things that are just going to have to be pushed back. And so we're working with those applicants to talk about what those things are. But as always, we're trying to keep those projects that are actually going to construct something moving along in front of the board. So I will finish that upcoming agenda items that I've been working on, well, only since last Wednesday, but it's just been a busy time working with both the Historic Commission and the Planning Board on with the staffing levels we got, and we'll keep at it. And we appreciate your patience, knowing that it's just an odd sort of time to be working at things.
Okay. Any questions from any board members? Charlotte?
What is the thinking at Town Hall about town meeting?
Town meeting is currently scheduled for the third Monday after the
After the 18th?
no, after the state of emergency is lifted. So what we're going to hear on the 18th is where we're at from the governor's task force to find out, what that prospect is. One of the other things we've been doing very deliberately on our side is we're getting a lot of requests from restaurants who want to know if we're going to be constrained to a percentage of our capacity. Can we put those seats outside? Can we spread more people out? Is there a fast track way to do that? So we're having a Zoom meeting in-house on Thursday with town council, the Board of Health, the Zoning Board of Appeals to find out, is there some way we can kind of fast track moving seats around and maybe putting tents outside for people to allow them to maximize their limited capacity. Because and I'm just going to make up a number, if they come out and say a restaurant can only be 40% of its capacity, and you've still got to maintain people 6 feet apart, can you do that within the structure they have? So people have asked us, well, could we put a tent out in the parking lot? Could we put a tent out in our yard? And so it's going to be based upon the size of the site and what we're seeing. We've actually got an application from Paul's Pizza in to the ZBA just yesterday that we're reviewing. And then there's all the people who asked, well, could you close Main Street? Could people dine in the street on Main Street from the restaurants downtown? Could they use the library grounds? People are asking us a lot of different things, and we're trying to vet those to find out, what we're doing with that. Michaela has put together a survey, essentially that we've sort of borrowed from other folks on the planners listserv that we're getting ready to send out to local businesses to ask them, what are the sort of things that we can do to help you kind of get back up to speed? What are your needs? We hear a lot of that stuff anecdotally, but we're putting together a survey monkey that Michaela's been working with the Chamber of Commerce with the town manager's office on, and we hope to have that launched shortly. What we know is there's a lot we don't know. On the 18th, we'll have a better idea, but things are looking better. But as you keep hearing from the experts, You don't want to open too suddenly and too rapidly and create some sort of backlash. So those are the things that go on between the times we get together. We love seeing you guys, but we are, as we say here in Massachusetts, wicked busy when we're not at your meetings as well.
Okay. Any other questions of Tom on this? Okay, so Tom, I gather we wouldn't see a full agenda until pretty close to when our next meeting is. Is that correct?
I will get that out to you. Pinky swear Scouts honor. I was a terrible scout, but I don't want to disparage the Scouts by saying Scouts honor. But we'll get you the first of every Tuesday every month. You get that schedule, but we'll tighten it up what we've got right now and get that out to you in the next couple of days. So you've got sort of coming attractions.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we will have an election between now and then. The election on the 19th is going forward.
Oh, yeah.
I think most people have already voted.
Oh, yes.
I'm not voting for any of you.
No, you can't.
Okay, are there any announcements that anybody wishes to make? Okay, the general correspondence was all covered under the Hayway Road. And we just went over future agenda items that Tom brought up, but those are ones that we're looking for. Is there anybody who wishes to add anything else to the agenda at some point in time?
We have a couple of hanging projects. It would just be nice to hear what's happened to them. The big development down there on the Woods Hole Road. Where are they? Are they in court? Is anything happening on that? Where
Talking about the Dome project?
The Dome project, right.
Okay.
Just to get updates on the stuff that's out there hanging.
Okay. So Tom and Michaela, you both heard that, updates on things that are hanging. Okay, anything else?
I'll be talking to Bob Ament again tomorrow about the discussions tonight with about the Shamsi project. I promised him I would be getting back to him on the email I've been composing about Woods Hole Partners, and I will ask him what the status is on the Woods Hole special permit for that project.
And at the end of our last meeting, we inquired about when you would be sending out the recodified bylaws, and it was going to be soon. And I wonder, I know a lot's happened in between. Did that happen? Do the developers and the lawyers and the sort of the next tier of users of that document, do they have it yet?
No, I haven't spoken to Bob Mitchell since 4 o'clock this afternoon about the recodification. And so we were hoping to get a meeting together with Bob Ritchie and Noreen on Article 10 on non-conforming uses. That has since gone by the wayside because just people having a hard time getting together, getting their schedules together. So Bob Mitchell tells me he's shipping Article 10 as is. We'll have all those documents in short order, both in a Word format and a PDF format, and we will share those documents with the development community, much like we did shared our recently voted determination of access with those folks to seek their comments. And of course, that is on the list of things to be voted in our November special town meeting. So we certainly, or our annual town meeting. So we certainly want to be talking about that over our summer of interest.
Okay. Anybody else? Paul? You got to turn your mic on, Paul.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Well, fine, but I've got to announce that our next meeting is June 9th. Okay. And shall we? Yes, Jim?
And I just wanted to mention, if there isn't while I'm at home, I have more time on my hands than I can believe. And
I've noticed.
Accessory apartment application that comes in and you want me to go through it for a first pass, just trying to help clean it up. I know the bylaw really well. I'd volunteer to do that if there was another one, just to streamline it, because we don't want them to hit our meetings and have to send them back.
Right.
So if maybe simple things like filling out a form right and getting the numbers to work when they have it, just picking the right numbers off the plan. Those are things that, I look for, and I'd be glad to do it again. You know, so I'd like to help this move along, and I don't want it to get caught up in the fact that we're so shorthanded in time. I'll do a little bit more volunteer work.
So Jim, what I'm understanding you to say is when an accessory apartment plan hits the office, ship it to you so that Michaela is freed up a little bit of the review, the initial.
And she can take it from there, whoever's going to do it. But I'm fairly familiar with the bylaw.
Mm-hmm. But just checking the numbers and stuff like that would free Michaela up from that. Okay, Charlotte?
I wonder if that offer of the use of free time that we all have so much of now extends to the planning board members looking at the recodified bylaws. If the non-conforming thing hasn't quite gelled, that's only 1 out of 12 articles. All the others could be looked at, and it'd be wonderful to have the really experienced members of the board going through that.
Yeah, I think you're
Skip 'em
right.
tomorrow.
You cheated us. I think there are 14 elements.
Wait a minute. Let me see here. This is the new baby right here.
Yep.
Just as sick as the old one. And you're probably right. I'm sure you're right. Yeah, all the way up to 14.8.
Yeah.
But we'd only be missing one, and there's a lot to go through.
Yeah, there is a lot, and it's eye crossing. You can only just do so much. So everybody who can help and get their comments in on it would be very helpful. Thank you, Charlotte. Anybody else?
I don't know
We
about
are-
you guys, but I'm busier now than I ever was.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, it's gardening time too. You know, you got to do it now or it doesn't get done. So anyway, adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye. Bye,
See ya.
Pat. I'll talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Have a good
Bye.
trip, Tom.
Michaela.
I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Pat, there was no second.
Too
Second.
bad.